Okay.
All right, looks like we're live. How's everybody doing today? We're gonna wait a little bit longer for some more people to jump in. For those of you who may not know, we're having this live hangout as part of WOBO, which is Week of Beef Only or Week of Burger Only. It's a concept started by Mike from Keto Mad as part of his way of celebrating World Carnivore Month, basically. He had asked me to have this conversation today with a couple of raw carnivores for your entertainment, and I gladly accepted. I'm glad he reached out to me, and that's basically it. So I am here today, so far anyway, with Andrew. We will have Doug hopefully joining us soon. I heard he ran out to the store to get some fresh raw meat.
Mhm.
But how you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing pretty good. It's
Right
a
on.
beautiful morning here in Texas.
Texas, cool. Why don't
Yes.
you introduce yourself to my audience who may not be familiar with you, and if you want to plug any of your social media, now would be the time.
Yes. So, if you ever seen me on Twitter, you might know me as the Carnivorous Entomologist. My hashtag, or I guess Twitter handle, is the Carnivore Ant-Man. Not hard to find. It's kind of a persona made because I like to fence and I love raw meat and I love entomology. For those of you who don't know, entomology is a study of insects. So I went to university to study insects and got a degree. I specialize mainly in ants and other social insects, but I also have a specification in medical entomology. And the funny thing is, entomology is one of the things that kind of helped me come to this realization about plant foods, animal foods, human interactions, stuff like that. Because in entomology, it's kind of impossible to not have to approach agriculture because agriculture is the dominating moneymaker in entomology. You're constantly developing new ways to maintain profitable crops while dealing with the pests. So you're developing all kinds of pesticides, integrated pest management methods, and a lot of it's centered around the chemical defenses of plants against insects. And I think a lot of people make this blunder of assuming it just affects insects. Plants, they're sessile for the most part. They defend themselves with chemical defenses and are used against anything that would wish to predate on them. Of course, dose dependency, size of animal, type of creature, it affects how it works, but humans are not, immune to this kind of stuff. And there is accumulative effects depending on what you're consuming. So ironically, entomology, which is teaching you how all this stuff is great, kind of threw me in the other direction when I was thinking for myself. But yeah, insects are everything. To me, it's the most interesting creatures on Earth besides us people. I love to collect them. I love to go and explore the countries to find insects. I've been to Dominica. I've been to Costa Rica. I was a published undergrad for ants. Ants to me are the most amazing insect on earth. But as for the raw food stuff, I used to weigh 300 pounds. Of course, that was way back in high school. I clocked it at 300. Ever since high school, I've been trying to figure out weight, and I've done it in every wrong way you can imagine. And it eventually led me to where I am now. I've done veganism, I've done high carb, I've done low calorie, I've done protein and everything else restricted. I've done keto, and keto eventually led to carnivore. Now, when I was on carnivore, I was cooking things less and less over time. I noticed the less it was cooked, the more raw it was, the more it satiated, the better I felt. That's how I eventually ended up eating raw. And to me, it makes sense. Of course, we can get into those topics later as to why. That's a bit of a background right there.
Okay, so let me just interject before we get a little too deep. So you said you've tried a whole bunch of different diets.
Oh,
Have you
yeah.
had much success on any of them, keto included? Because I hear that's
Keto was the first time I was actually getting healthier while losing weight. That
uh
was what made the
But you
difference.
started off your, let's say, your dietary journey when you were actually consciously choosing what to
Okay.
eat, not just because of the flavor of the food, but you
Mhm.
actually had a goal in mind, like weight loss. What did you start off with and why?
I had the assumption that I could, as long as I exercised enough, it didn't matter what I ate. That
Hmm.
was a
Calories
major
in, calories out.
mistake. Yep.
So what? How did
And
you start off? Go ahead.
I did ROTC in high school. I was also in scouting. That helped keep me active, but the weight would always fluctuate. It would fluctuate between like 280 and 300 pounds.
Wow.
Something's not right.
How
So
tall are you, just for reference?
I'm roughly 6 foot, like just shy of that 72nd inch, So
Okay,
technically,
so it's not like you were 6'6" and just
no,
a really, really
I
big man.
was.
You were overweight severely. Right on. So what's the first dietary approach that you tried?
The first one, of course, was caloric restriction.
Hmm.
It's the prevailing idea still in mainstream weight loss.
Yeah,
So I try to control that. The thing is, if you're just trying to control calories and not what you're actually eating, you end up starving. Well, starving in one sense, but you're depriving yourself of something that you're addicted to and you don't know it, which in my case is the carbohydrates and the sugar.
totally.
And because you're burning off of this glucose metabolism, you're really just setting yourself up for failure.
Hmm.
And as you keep lowering the calories and your body is maintaining the glucose metabolism, your metabolism overall shuts down, which ultimately leads to binge eating. Your weight goes back up. It's roller coaster. And of
So
course,
would
during
it
this time, depression, anxiety, the glucose is messing with everything.
so would it be fair to say you went low fat, high carb,
Oh
basically?
yes, oh yes.
That seems to
That's actually
be
that.
the way most people go because fats are
Mhm.
demonized and we're supposed to be afraid of these things. So you went with calorie restriction. You also mentioned vegan. I'm a huge fan of the YouTube vegan community. Wink, wink. So
Aren't we all?
tell us a little bit
There are
about your
special
vegan experience.
friends.
Obviously, we want to talk about raw meat, and we'll get to that in
Okay.
just a second. So let's
So
not,
there was a period before I did keto. This is when I
uh-huh.
was in college station at A&M. Also for background, I was in fencing for A&M. I was their top saber fencer for 3 years. So I took athletics very seriously. I was swimming laps every morning. I was weight training every afternoon, running every evening, and maintaining this athletic skill for. That's why, of course, I got this on. It's a custom
While
shirt.
you were also 200 plus pounds?
No, no, the
Oh,
weight
I
I
see.
had gotten down to about 220 before
Hmm.
I was doing, fencing successfully. It took me about a year to figure out the sport, then I got really good at it.
Gotcha.
And I tried veganism for about, I think it was roughly 1 to 2 months total. Of course, in the world of veganism, doesn't sound like much, but boy, that was a, a mistake.
Tell us.
Worst. And I was doing it raw. Like I was doing the total raw vegan diet.
80, 10, 10,
Fresh
or
fruit,
whatever the hell
fresh
it is.
vegetables, beans, rice, anything. And that was like the worst digestive nightmare of my life. Considering it was already bad to begin with, like that made it
Did you have
significantly worse.
digestive issues prior to beginning veganism?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did they get worse on the vegan diet or
Oh, yes, that
I see.
exacerbated it.
Okay.
But I was like trying anything. I'm like, oh, maybe it's just, an adjustment, but it never changed. It just got worse.
So after that, we're not gonna attack the vegans too much right now. But after
Huh.
veganism, you discovered keto. Is that correct?
Yes. And
Okay.
with keto, I mean, like, I thought to myself, okay, well, the principle is if you lower carbohydrate consumption, you're changing to a different metabolism, which is ketone production, beta hydroxybutyrate, fat production, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, well, if this is true, because I've been trying all these things, I've literally been experimenting with nutrition and diet to lose the weight for all these years. Like, it's just another thing to do, see what happens. And I was shocked. Like, not only am I losing some weight, I actually feel healthier. Actually, feel
Uh-huh.
some vitality coming back. Of course, I didn't
And you
understand.
were measuring ketones and doing all that
Nope,
stuff?
didn't do any of that. I just measured based on difference in appearance, athletic performance. I didn't have a dip or anything like that. That was the funny thing. In fencing, there's all these guys. Like I used to before each tournament, I eat a banana, thinking I needed it for electrolytes and sugar and stuff.
Right.
And then I show up to tournaments completely fasted.
Uh-huh.
When I do workouts, I stopped eating beforehand. I do everything fasted. So I go a whole day because I went to OMAD. So I do all these tournaments which last all day long on an empty stomach, and I'm outrunning everyone who's carbing up, 5 minutes before they
Right.
go fencing. I'm like, you don't need sugar to do this, man. Like I'm still outpacing you. Like you put some nitro, in your tank, but that nitro has like a 10-second ten
Right.
second
It
burst. I
burns
have the
quickly.
consistent I have the consistent energy for like the Energizer Bunny. So And the thing is about fencing, I do saber specifically. There's 3 weapons in modern Olympic fencing. You have epee, full, and saber. Saber is the fastest and the most aggressive weapon. You have to be able to function at 110% at all times because you don't have time to think. You don't have time to be instinctive. Whereas the other weapons that are thrusting, they can take their time all day like they're playing chess. But in saber, you don't have that opportunity. It's a different kind of intelligence. It's the move, react, do now,
So
and the time to think.
reflexes, yeah.
So if you can't just pick up and move, you're kind of a sitting duck. You can swing, you can have the fanciest sword hand in the whole world, but if you can't move, it's not going to work out for you.
And you found success doing this while
Yes.
also on keto.
See,
you
I
notice
saw the change in people, how quickly they get tired out. The funniest thing, usually in saber, doesn't happen because it goes by so fast. It's occasionally you have an exchange where you go back and forth like many, many times.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't usually happen. So people are not prepared for the endurance. And I noticed it never affected me when I did that. And people, I'm just watching the look on their face behind the mask, that tired fatigue, that anxiety going up because they know they're running out of steam. I'm just smiling.
So
Because I'm like, dude, I can go on forever.
you ended up outlasting everybody.
Yeah.
Now, as far as your weight loss goes, you noticed that you were also dropping a lot of weight, some weight on keto.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because this seems to be a trend with a lot of people who go keto, a lot of them seem to go the carnivore route. Eventually, they start taking out the vegetables little by little, and they end up eating almost exclusively, if not 100% meat. My story is a little bit different. I went just carnivore from the standard diet. But what made you go from keto to carnivore? How did you find out about it? I mean, it's such a, I'm assuming too, at the time you did it, it wasn't very popular at all.
Yeah, that was the weird
How
thing.
did you how did you find out about it?
And all of a sudden it cropped up. I'm like, well, that's awkward.
So
it was.
And when was this? Just give us a reference when you went carnivore, like a time reference.
So I've been fully carnivorous for over a year. When I was on keto, of course, like I said, I like exploring things. I take the risks, try to figure things out. I thought to myself, okay, well, if the primary principle behind these benefits is the restriction of carbohydrates, what happens when you remove all of them? Let's see if we can find out. Well, it turns out, for the most part, that's literally carnivore. And I started looking around. I'm like, okay. Back then, I didn't really have a good understanding of what nutrients were in foods and things like that. It was all like calories were everything in my head still. And then I came to the conclusion that, well, it turns out the animal foods do have everything. I'm like, well, if that's true, I got to put it to the test. So restrict everything. I basically spent a month, or I kind of locked myself away because I knew, like, my biggest problem on keto, I call it the keto recipe black hole. Because what happens is you're just restricting carbs a certain amount, but then you're told you can do whatever it takes to reach those numbers. So now you have this black hole of recipes of imitating all the things you shouldn't be eating, but you're justifying them by saying it's just enough carbs. So ice cream was my biggest problem. Yeah, I was really bad with ice cream. So basically, I spent a month. I restricted myself to strictly just chuck roast. The great thing is my university has a meat center, which is a part of the academic institution that studies the meat and poultry and stuff, and they sold it pretty cheap. It was a range.
Let me just interrupt you for 1 second. You started out cooked, I'm assuming, yeah, just so we know.
It was cooked.
Okay, obviously. Okay, go ahead.
Things I was lightly searing. I was already a medium rare kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I went for the full month to see what would happen. That was a suggestion, is that you do this for 30 days before it became a thing. I'm like, okay. But I went through, despite even being keto and fat adapted, I still went through the withdrawals. In College Station, I didn't own a vehicle. I walked everywhere. So walking to college is about 4 miles. Walking home is another 4. Going to work. I used that to keep myself from having access to temptation. And because the way my bank was set up and stuff, I had to walk there essentially. So I could make myself not have access to things I shouldn't eat while walking home and walking to college. And when I came home, I kind of locked myself away because I knew I'd be irritable. So I went through this trial by fire to force the withdrawal symptoms to get them over with. But by the end of that month,
let me,
I
because
walked.
I'm a little bit lost here.
Yeah.
You went from keto to carnivory, and you were still experiencing
Some,
withdrawals?
yes, a little bit.
Oh, sugar withdrawal, maybe,
Mhm.
okay. All right, continue, please.
And after that month of restricting like that, and just drinking water and eating the meat, and I was putting salt on it too. There's a chain of stores down here called HEB, which is kind of like a better version of Walmart, more local.
Mm-hmm.
I walked into an HEB walking after a month, and for the first time in my life, I walked into a grocery store, and none of it meant anything to me, unless it was meat.
No
That's when it
cravings.
psychologically dawned on me. I'm like, oh my goodness. Not even the ice cream. You walked in the ice cream mall, there's no draw, there's no desire, there's no want. It's just like, oh, that's just an object. Go to the meat section, ooh, what's this? But nothing else mattered. Period.
Uh-huh.
And even like you walk by the bakery, there's fresh baked bread, apple pie, stuff like that. Things that would be tantalizing to most people. I smell it and I can appreciate it as a smell with no food attached to it. There's no sensation of food or hunger attached to it. And that was like, wow, that is a freedom that I think is worth having. And a lot of people they don't know it until they go through the withdrawal stuff.
And during your journey, the transition from keto to carnivore, did you figure this out on your own, or did you see somebody doing this? And did you
I
know
just
any
read a bunch of
carnivores?
stuff, put together to the best of my knowledge and understanding of what worked and what didn't, and just tried to see what would happen. I
I
don't
see.
usually like taking people's word for it. I just assemble. I'm a
Well,
very logical kind of guy where I have to just take all the information and I have to
mhm.
create my own conclusion.
So you kind of figured it out on your own, because like for me, for example, I had to see it to believe it, sort of thing, because
Yeah,
you know how meat is just so stigmatized and demonized in
yeah.
society.
It's a
It's
lot
so
of
bad.
psychological blocks that are in the way,
Totally. So
and
for
I had
me,
to
like,
convince myself by doing it. That's how.
yeah, but I think most people, and I'm definitely in that group, we kind of have to see somebody doing this for at least maybe a few months and not die for us to be able to take that leap ourselves. So that was definitely something that I experienced. But you're not one of the more, I would say, stereotypical people. You're just kind of got to hear by self-experimentation. Now,
Mhm.
going from cooking your meat to trying it raw, I mean, I know you said you never really like overcooking your meat, so to speak, but how did that transition come about, and why?
Okay, so every time people ask me this, I have to talk about in the past too. So when I was younger, I used to cook hamburgers on the grill for the family. I was
Hmm.
always told there can be absolutely no pink. So whenever I failed to do that, because you cut it open and you check, I would hide the fact that I did that, eat it myself, thinking I was like falling on a grenade for everyone. But I always found I liked it better than the cooked meat, and I never understood why as a kid. Those dots didn't connect until I started cooking things less and less. I was basically just searing the chuck roast from the university every time. I was eating like 2 to 3 pounds a day. I would just lightly sear it and salt it. And I ended up getting less and less. Like, okay, let's just try it raw and see what happens. And when I thought about it, because I come from a science background, doing entomology, you have to deal with genetics, you have to deal with chemistry, all that good biological stuff. And I thought to myself, some people would argue that cooking destroys food, and it makes sense from a chemical perspective because you're altering the structures of biological compounds. So it's an organic chemistry approach, and it should be that if your body, as complex as it is, it's full of different enzymes and different processes. When it looks at things, it has to recognize them by chemical recognition. So if you're using heat, which is an indiscriminate use of energy, it's not this calculated process. You're just throwing energy at something and it's altering the structure. It's going to alter it to a point that something that should recognize it maybe cannot because it's not the same chemical formulation. It's not usable. And I noticed that when I went raw, there was less fecal matter. I mean, it's TMI, but people have a significant reduction in stool when they go to carnivore diet because it's not as much. There's no fiber to keep making it voluminous. It's even less when you go raw. I'm like, okay, well, if there's less waste, that makes total sense because your body's utilizing more of what you're eating. Whereas if you cook it, depending on how much you cook it, there's a percentage of that the body cannot use. So I think there's a common theory or idea that people cooked meat made it more digestible. I think it's a misconception. Sure, the heat may have broken down some of the protein. It may go through your system faster, but it doesn't mean your body can use it as much.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed
It's
the
like
same.
it's absorption versus digestion.
Yeah.
People always assume they look conflicted too. Hey, Doug.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Sorry I'm a little late.
Oh, hey, no big deal. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Just picked up some breakfast. I got into San Diego just last night pretty late. So,
What's for breakfast?
you want to see my breakfast? This is why I love California. I'll see if I can get it on the camera. Got some raw cream here.
Nice.
Dude, that's state. As many things, this is a political statement. There's some things wrong with California. It's one thing they got right. They can sell raw dairy in the stores.
You can't get that
incredible.
in Texas.
No, you have to go to the farm. They will not allow you. You cannot sell raw dairy products from a store or outside the farm. I have to drive all the way to the farms. Like this morning, I picked up raw goat kefir. I can go get that actually.
Yeah.
And they also did have raw goat milk. I just went to the Sprouts a couple of miles from here, so also got some grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. So
Nice.
yeah, I
Well,
was hungry.
so we were just talking about Andrew's journey, his dietary journey from almost 300 pounds through the vegan diet, so on and so forth, all the way to raw carnivory. If you wouldn't mind telling us if maybe you had a similar journey, and if so, why? I mean, is this like your first dietary approach, raw carnivory, or did you also go through a period of self-discovery?
So this is actually going to be a fun story to talk about. So I started ketogenic probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it was during my college years. I used to be a little over 380 pounds myself. So I was a bigger guy, heavier guy. And I was just sick, tired, and I always wanted to feel better. It wasn't necessarily about losing the weight. It was more just feeling better every step of the way nutritionally.
Of course.
So when I started keto, it was kind of like, okay, as long as I keep the carbs low, I'll start feeling better, which I did. But then I started to realize there were other foods I could eliminate as well that only got me to feeling better and better and better. So I probably went from low carb kind of keto for maybe 3-4 years to more animal based, without the vegetable oils, without any of the inflammatory foods that, modern processed kind of garbage. I go from kind of eliminating those veg oils to going carnivorous back, I think it was July 17. And I'd say about 5-6 months into going carnivore, I realized I was cutting even less. Like I was eliminating pasteurized dairy. I was eliminating, like seasonings on my foods. And I started really craving my meat just cooked less and less and less the more I eliminated. So I was like, okay, let's give this raw thing a try. I mean, everybody's having sashimi, they're having ceviche, they're having steak tartare.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was only natural, honestly.
There's a lot of stuff there. I would like to back up just a little bit. So would it be fair to say that you were doing dirty keto for a while?
Yeah, for a while. It was just, I guess it was just easier for me. I was in college. I didn't really think anything of it.
Right. So, but it did work. You did notice some results while on keto?
Yeah, I did get some results, but I always felt fatigued and still tired when I was doing kind of like your regular, I guess, mainstream keto with like the vegetables and the veg oil and kind of not taking as much raw animal fats as I am now, which is completely different.
So you felt like it was good, but maybe not good enough, and then you started carnivory. How did you, because it's such a weird concept, maybe not so much anymore, but, like I was telling Andrew, meat being so evil and stigmatized all the time, why did you decide to do, were there any like people you were looking up to or seeing doing this? How did you get into it, basically?
Basically how did I get into carnivory? So It was funny. It was from a meme, out of all things, from a guy named Ash Simmons. I mean, you probably all know Ash Simmons, High Stakes on Twitter. I think it was the meme was like, what if I told you veggies aren't necessary for optimal health? I'm like, light bulb went in my head. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like, I've been eating all these,
crazy.
Yeah. I was eating nothing but like chicken breast and broccoli when I was trying to lose weight at times. I was really just trying to, I don't know, figure out what made me feel best. And it was always about feeling best and not necessarily losing weight. There were spans of time where I was on like protein sparing modified fasts. I was basically trying to just cut to like the bare bones and cut calories, and it's just like I never felt good. I mean, I feel incredible incorporating more animal foods, especially raw, but it was a real progression. I want people to understand that it's you don't have to jump like right into it. I mean, start kind of maybe cooking your meats a little less and just see how you feel. I mean, it may not be for you, it may not be for other people, but I just know for me, it was just, I guess it was just that next step. So,
but why did you start cooking your meat less? Just a flavor thing, or
it was like a flavor thing, a feeling thing. It wasn't necessarily like I don't know. I didn't really do too much, I guess, research into it in the beginning. It was just, it tastes a lot better.
You notice the differences. It's one of those, like, I noticed the same thing. We can probably expand on it later, but it's like a satiety thing. You notice the difference.
Yeah, like, well, right before Doug jumped on, we were talking about how you notice your stool quantity diminish going just from, the standard diet, let's say, to cooked meat diet. There's that one step, and then going from cooked meat to raw meat, which is something I myself started doing maybe a month ago. Yeah, you definitely seem to digest the food better, and you don't see, at least, I can't speak for you guys, I don't need to eat as much all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's another thing. When I used to cook my meat, when I used to salt it, when I used to, I guess, even season it at times, or I would go to events where most of the like meat that they served had some kind of seasoning, flavoring, just to be almost not necessarily hyper palatable, but just palatable enough for people to eat more and more. It's like, I go back to those times, I'm like, wait, I would have maybe, 2-3 pounds plus versus what I'm having now, which is probably pound and a half, 2 pounds a day, if that. So
just for reference,
palatability is definitely, there's something, it's okay. Something to be said about palatability and nutrient density. So.
Yeah. Just for reference, because we're talking quantities here, if you don't mind telling the people like your stats, height, and weight.
Oh yeah, I'm about 6'2" now, and a little under 240. I'd say 235 now.
So wait, a pound and a half of meat a day is enough?
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah, a pound and a half, 2 pounds, honestly.
That's kind of where I stood at. When I was salting meat, like you guys, Sean Baker, he could boast about how much he can put away. Totally. I was able to put away just as much as he was because it was so hyper palatable.
Yeah,
but the body doesn't need that much.
No, I've definitely noticed that myself as well. Not that long ago, I was eating about 5,000 calories, trying to gain a little bit of weight that I had lost. But now I'm very much like Doug. If I eat a pound and a half of meat, and granted, I do eat some eggs and a little bit of dairy as well. But if I eat a pound and a half, that's a lot for me. And I'm, again, for reference, I'm 6 feet tall, 175. Well, no, 170 actually. Keto. It must have been 5 pounds of water weight. I don't know that I lost. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. People are always like, oh, it's all water weight that you lost. Well, what is it? Under 3 pounds of water?
No. Maybe 15 pounds, maybe 20 pounds. Yeah. But after that, no way. So you said you don't use any salt anymore? Is that right, Doug? Neither one of you
salt. I mean, it's sometimes it'll get hidden in there if I'm going out to like events or something, and it's like I can tell right away if something's got salt in it. And I guess the more salt that's added without me knowing, the more water I'm going to drink. It's almost like my body's saying, "Whoa, this is my electrolytes are out of balance. Let's let's figure this out." So back when I was doing basically a standard ketogenic diet, it was more, okay, I have to get all my salt, all my potassium, magnesium. I remember buying all these different kinds of salts and potassiums and like a magnesium citrate supplement, just thinking, okay, I got to make sure I get like the exact number every single day. And it's like, it's amazing how like raw meat is so not a lot of people talk about this. It's so hydrating. It's incredibly hydrating. So I don't feel the need to even drink a lot of water, if that,
So let's
Yeah,
just back up a little bit. Did you
Mhm.
guys have any electrolytes issues on keto, which is why maybe you were taking these electrolytes, or did you just do it because everybody says to do it?
It's a little mixture of both. I can understand why people say you need them, especially when you're consuming a lot of vegetables. And then even, I don't know if vegetable oil really even has a tie with this, but I mean, it may. It was when I was eating probably like a pound, a little over a pound of like just leafy greens or whatever they want to, kind of coin the term as. And I was always cramping up, and I'm just like, okay, what's going on? So that was probably why I was, over salting everything and seasoning everything when I was more standard keto.
So the salt did help with the cramping.
To an extent, it does.
To an extent, yeah.
About how you're doing it. So it's one of the biggest advices. I think everyone who does keto knows what keto flu is. It's just what we call that collection of basically fatigue symptoms, which is electrolyte imbalance. And the general advice is to just take salt. Right. So yeah, it can be helpful, but the problem is if it becomes a permanent mainstay of someone's diet, you're creating an imbalance indefinitely. The whole point of just taking it temporarily was to alleviate the discomfort of your body adjusting to a new equilibrium, essentially, because if you're changing the input, your body has to adjust to it. So if you're eating an abundance of salt, well, your body has to figure out how to balance that with the other electrolytes.
Right.
And as soon as you take it away, well, the body has to reset itself again, which is why you feel weird every time you shoot one out of whack. Okay, like, for instance, that's except, well, no, like we get food, like, oh my God, I got punched in the face with a salt shaker, because there's so much salt.
So you don't use any
used
salt
to being
anymore,
so little.
You don't take any salt anymore with your food?
No.
None. Okay, well, that's going to be the next step for me. And how do you guys suggest I do that? Should I take the salt out? Because I would say right now I am like 95% raw, whether it's dairy, eggs, or meat. But I am still salting because when I went to cooked meat from the standard diet, I was cramping up like crazy, like a lot of people. And the salt did help. So ever since then, I have been eating a lot of salt. I do notice, however, that now that I'm mostly raw, I'm not drinking as much water. And, if I don't need to eat the salt, as you guys are intimating or outright saying, rather,
yeah, basically,
then maybe I should take it out. Should I do this gradually, probably? Is that what you would recommend? Or
you can. I personally went cold turkey because I realized the salt was becoming an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the point of salting things because I was after the taste. Of course, I didn't know it at the time. It took this epiphany to realize it, that I had so much salt on there, I couldn't taste the salt anymore.
Yeah.
That's when it dawned on me, like, oh, dude, you got to stop this right now.
Yeah, I let my wife try
cold turkey. I just cut it out.
Like, this is horrible. My wife had a taste of what I was eating the other day, and she's like, there's just too much salt in here. What are you doing? So I'm gonna definitely take that advice. I don't know about cold turkey. I don't want to, because I was cramping up. I was waking up with mad Charlie horses when I was eating cooked meat and not salting it enough. But I'm definitely gonna try to go in that direction. So,
and there may be something to be said about that. The more you cook your meat, the more you may even need those electrolytes. I mean, same thing when I was kind of like standard keto. It was more, okay, I got to get these or I'm not going to feel my best. But it was a lot of like, the supplementing magnesium. I just remember just over salting everything. And it's just like, it was almost like I wasn't even eating the food. It was more so just eating the salt. And the veggies were almost like a kind of like, I don't know, like a driver to just get more salt or something. And it was like a constant loop, and I'm just happy to be away from that.
So
it's so much easier.
Doug says eating raw meat, he is drinking less water now. Is that something that you find, Andrew, as well?
Yes, I've actually been experimenting with eliminating drinking water altogether. It's not been perfect. As you can see, I'm drinking a fluid here. But it's not so much not drinking water, it's drinking pure water.
Obviously, yeah.
What I'm finding is, of course, I'm approaching this from a chemistry and organic chemistry perspective as well. When you go and do experiments in a chemistry course, you use water because it's a universal salt. It's used to dissolve and break down things and kind of give a medium for chemical reactions. Now, those are certain conditions for certain settings. Chemical reactions have to have very specific conditions to work at a certain rate or to work at all. The problem with drinking pure water and guzzling it all day long, like some people suggest you should, is you're disrupting all that inside of your body. And if the water is devoid of any electrolytes like sodium, potassium in a balance, which is similar to what's in your blood, kind of like if you go to a hospital, like an IV drip, it's basically a saline solution. You're basically adding all this material to a system that's not prepared to be buffered for. And it also turns out your stomach acid, a big part of that gastric juice is electrolytes. It's not just stomach acid itself. So by drinking all that water, you dilute your stomach acid, then you're shooting it down your small intestine, and it's blocking absorption. It's interfering with all the enzymes going on, all the different chemical reactions that are occurring. Either slows it down or reduces the rate. You end up with less digested food, and you can also get diarrhea from it too, because your body's like, oh no, don't do that. I've noticed the longer I go raw carnivore, the easier that effect is. If you try to drink a bunch of water, the effect is much more profound.
Mm-hmm. Now, would it be fair to say that because when you're cooking your meat, you are effectively drying it out, that creates more demand for water?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
makes
definitely
sense.
part of it. Mm-hmm.
I see.
And I'd also say, depending on how it's cooked and what you're eating out of what's left of being cooked, cooking it doesn't destroy electrolytes per se, but it may end up in the rendered juices that you're not going to eat, which is why they're being lost for the most part.
Okay, this is a big question that a lot of people, or a concern that a lot of people may have while eating raw meat, even though.
Let me guess, germs.
Yes, even though lettuce
I knew this
and
would come up
spinach
eventually.
seem to be the culprit when it comes to people getting sick. What are your guys' thoughts on parasites and pathogens and all that?
I think they're highly misunderstood, and our society has shot itself in the foot by being overly hygienic. It makes your immune system weaker. So there are many things that outside of an overly hygienic society you'd be encountering all the time in your everyday life that will have no effect on you whatsoever, because it's just what your body expects. You take that away, you make yourself vulnerable. And it can be said about food quality. You can also talk about antibiotics. There are so many things that have changed microorganisms in the past 100 years that make them unnatural and strain-wise, on top of what you're eating too, which has also been affected, where it's been modified, the animal's been fed something it shouldn't have been fed to begin with.
Totally.
But if you're eating a high-quality animal source raw, there should be no issue. If your body is healthy and functioning, your stomach acid is the way it should be functioning, nothing pathogenic should be able to survive and thrive in your gut. Should be no dysbiosis whatsoever.
What is our stomach acid pH? Because I've heard various 1.5, 3.0. What is it?
It's between like 1 and 3, isn't it, Doug? Like it varies between like 1.5 to 3.
It probably depends on your diet.
Lower than most carnivores. There are solidly carnivorous animals in nature, and our pH is lower than theirs. We're considered an omnivore,
Okay.
So it's
which might suggest that we were eating animals that were dead and rotting, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe we were scavenging.
Yep, scavenging.
Mm-hmm. And there's also something to be said about fermenting. There's a lot of different people who, we're, I don't know if Andrew mentioned this already, we're part of a raw carnivorous group on Facebook at this point that actually grew pretty quick so far. I think we have close to 500 members now. We only started a couple weeks ago.
Tell us what it is. These people
it's a long name. I think it recently changed.
It's a very long. Yeah. Let me see if I could look that up and give you.
It's an open group, yeah.
Oh, it's a closed group, but you send an invite and we'll. I'm actually one of the moderators on it right now, and
gotcha.
We can have some things like down in the description.
I got it for you. It's called the Raw. So it's raw-som. Upon an awesome, it's the Rawsome. Primal Carnivore and Zero Carb Sanctuary.
Totally. In case anyone listening is interested, they can go check that out. Were you about to talk about raw meat? I mean, high meat? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, we're going to talk about high meat. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Andrew, you can start, and I'll kick in when needed.
So personally, I haven't tried high meat yet, but this is a fermentation process. When it comes to putting out fresh, you can't be doing this with frozen because you've destroyed the natural bacteria that are already occurring in the food. But when it comes to fermentation, like other foods, the bacteria are able to convert and change many substances into better nutrient absorption, or say like from K1 to K2, things like that. So by fermenting meat over time, you are making certain things more bioavailable to you. And some people do this all the time. Like I said, I personally haven't tried this yet. I haven't bothered to sit down and let meat sit out and rot, essentially.
Mhm.
So that's that one last thing I have not done. It's like I've done anything in the world, but I have not done the raw high meat yet.
Have you, Doug?
I have not. I know Eva, one of the moderators on our group, has, and she's posted how-to videos and actually her own tasting of it for herself. Actually, I think it was the past couple of weeks ago, or not even. It was actually pretty recent, wasn't it? About a week or two.
Mhm.
But she, I think, what was it? It was liver, right? She had
Yes.
a liver, and
A lot of people are doing that for organ meats.
yeah, and there's something to be said about the vitamin 2 or K2 content going up in these fermented foods, as well as the beneficial enzymes to help break down the food. When she had her first bite of it, it was almost like completely like her body just took it up, and like there was just no better feeling for her, and she's been hooked on it ever since. So
There's a
Yeah,
Euphorix.
I
Use
could
fork,
totally.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have experimented a little bit. I've been eating high meat for a while. Actually, before I even started eating raw meat, 100 or close to 100% raw meat
Oh,
diet.
you're ahead of the game, man. You should tell us.
Well, let me just tell you this much. If you're eating raw meat already, I highly recommend you try some high meat as well. It looks gross, but not anymore. It used to look gross. It used to smell bad, but not anymore. I mean, once you really get into it and start eating it, I don't want to say it's addictive because I don't think that's what it is, but you definitely notice, maybe it's psychosomatic, I don't know, but you do feel differently when you eat it. You do notice a change. Your digestion seems to improve. Your energy levels go up. And I recommend it. I mean, if you're already eating raw meat, I mean, come on. You know, someone who might think that eating raw meat is gross, yeah, I wouldn't recommend that to them. But it's definitely, it has had a positive effect on me and as well as a lot of people. So it's definitely something to try. And since we're talking liver and stuff like that, how do you guys feel about organs? Do you eat
I
them?
love organ meat.
Okay.
I was gonna say my only real barrier, besides not having done the high meat, is that I've not had access to fresh, raw, grass-fed and finished stuff. It's always previously frozen. I'm working on
that's
getting
another
towards
thing.
that.
It's tough.
It's really only way. Like you go to butcher, can I get some fresh liver straight from the cow? I'd look at you like, what is wrong with you?
Isn't that legislation? Isn't it law that you have to freeze it before you sell it or something like that?
No,
I don't believe so.
I'd basically have to be in a position to buy a whole cow or be friends with someone buying a whole cow who doesn't want the liver and they just give it to me fresh.
Yep.
But
So you, Andrew,
My
said
wife
something
doesn't quite have
interesting. You said something interesting that I picked up on when it comes to frozen liver and fermenting food that was previously frozen. If you can get some food, I'm going to tell you from experience, can get some food like a liver that wasn't previously frozen and it still has the bacteria you mentioned, and you're able to ferment that, you should definitely save that as a culture for any other meat that was previously frozen to sort of
kind of inoculate future ones. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah,
and there's some
introduce that bacteria.
suggestions. There's some suggestions. Sorry to interrupt. That enzymes are lost in the freezing process. I don't know if there's any validity with that. I mean, this was just coming from Agitus Founder Planets. And I mean, you can say what you want about him, but for if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be drinking this raw cream right now, straight from the grocer in California. So, which is pretty cool. What was I going on about? I was just rambling. But I definitely taste a difference in cooked versus, or not cooked versus, sorry, from
Fresh,
frozen
right?
versus fresh. Yeah.
Okay.
There's definitely a taste difference, and there's something to be said there. So
it seems to ferment differently and seems to have a different bacterial profile. I noticed a change definitely because sometimes we get meat that was frozen, like liver. Specifically, and then we also slaughter animals here on the farm, and then that way I get, you know, fresh meat that was never frozen before. So I do notice the difference. So definitely the bacterial profile, I would imagine, is different when you freeze it and kill some of that bacteria off. But I was gonna ask Andrew, do you consume dairy, or is that something
I do
you're not
sparingly. So I got some raw goat kefir here. There's a nice little big being goat farm about 40 minutes from here. And about an hour and a half from here, there's a farm that has Guernsey cows. They're certified A2, so they're a very protected lineage of the older breed of cows before. In case your viewers don't know, that most cows today that are made for mass production of milk that's pasteurized dairy, it's a different breed of cow than what people were used to in the past. They also produce a different kind of casein protein. It's dominated by A2. So there's A2 and A1. More people have immune issues with, or allergy issues with the A1 casein. The Guernsey
because
cows,
it's not our ancestral food, so to speak.
the A2 for the Guernsey cows are primarily an A2 producing casein only. Some
Do you
breeds
notice the
produce
difference?
Yeah, because I used to think I was lactose intolerant. I used to think I was allergic to dairy, and then you go drink this milk. It's like it's great, and I'm not dying. So there's that.
So
and the
you
cool
think
thing
it's
is,
the A1, A2 difference, or is it pasteurized raw difference?
Oh, it's
both. So pasteurization,
go ahead.
like I said, the heat, it's indiscriminate heat.
Yeah.
It's going to denature things. It breaks things down.
Mhm.
You're also killing the natural bacteria that came with the food. So anything that colonizes it afterwards has free reign. So you got that problem going for you. You've denatured the fats and proteins. So if you have any kind of gut permeability issues or any damage in the gut, it's going to, undigested stuff is going to attack the lining of the gut, get into your bloodstream. And of course, casein allergy. And so it's kind of like it's a double whammy. But you take that all away if you go back to the older unprocessed food, for the most part. But I'm not saying there aren't people out there that won't be lactose intolerant or have an allergy to some part of milk regardless. But
Yeah, some
big
people
part of
still
it, a
will
lot
have
of
some
people
kind of
think they
reactions.
do, but it really is because the food was processed and it's a different breed of cow.
And going off that too, I looked into the Paleolithic ketogenic diet, what they're doing out in Paleomedicina in Hungary, and they actually just don't allow their patients to have any dairy whatsoever. So there are some people out there whose gut permeability is extremely high, that even the smallest case of milk protein is going to kind of offset their progress in that sort of sense. So if you have kind of like any kind of allergy, or you're not feeling right, just you don't necessarily have to have it. I honestly use it as more of like a supplement. It's not like some people can go out there and have as much raw milk as they want and raw dairy, and they can be okay. For me, I can tell I've only been really supplementing it from time to time, and what's I gonna say? Pasteurized dairy is just a no-go for me. I don't even honestly think it's a real food in some senses, because it's just totally denatured. So I mean, it's almost like you kind of have to try to understand that, and it kind of goes back to taste and feeling. It tastes better and I feel better. So, and that's kind of going with the whole food quality kind of aspect. I mean, once you start eating more raw, you realize that these different tastes. I mean, you're not really tasting the charred meat or the salt. It's more so you're actually tasting the food itself. So,
so pasteurized dairy was one of your triggers. Is that safe to say? And raw milk you handled just fine.
For the most part, yeah.
For the most
I mean,
part,
still for some people out there, they still may have some kind of intolerances to it for whatever reason. So that's why I bring up that PKD example. So,
gotcha. Well, I was fortunate enough to be born with the lactose persistence or whatever it's called. I could drink pasteurized. I could drink raw. I could drink whatever. I could eat all kinds of cheese. I don't have any issues with dairy. Obviously, I prefer raw. It tastes better. It just seems like higher quality. So no doubt about that. But I don't really have any hang-ups. If someone has some delicious pasteurized cheese, I'm all over it.
Before we move on from that, one thing I guess we probably know but didn't say, when it comes to naturally occurring bacteria, most of that's lactobacillus inside of the milk. Over time, people do lose their lactase production, which is the enzyme that breaks down the lactose sugar. If it is a lactose intolerance issue, a person drinking raw milk is getting the benefit of the bacteria doing the work for them.
And the lactase is still in that milk. Is that correct?
Yes, so lactase is being produced, and the bacteria themselves are actively using it to digest and convert the lactose themselves.
Right, because if you leave that milk out, it'll essentially digest itself, so to speak, right? It'll spoil. Yeah, totally.
Basically what he's having right now.
It's just like, it's like a sour punch to the face. That's what kefir is.
I did see some kefir too.
The bacterial action.
So do you guys
kefir at the start too.
Do you guys eat strictly from the animal kingdom now, 100%, or is no coffee, none of that?
No,
Nothing.
and I have to actually thank Andrew on that. I used to be a very heavy coffee drinker. Yeah, I used to be a very heavy coffee drinker. And speaking of Andrew and also Mike, Keto Mad, I just kind of went cold turkey. I mean, it was tough for me because I used to be a big lifter when I was back in college during the whole PSMF days, where I was really cutting calories and the eat less, move more. It was just I remember when I finally got off, because you can't be doing that forever. Your body's just not going to allow you to. I binged like crazy. I ate, and I went from about 225-ish. I mean, like I said before, I'm around like 230, 235 now. I went from that 225 thinking, okay, I hit my goal or whatever. I just ballooned back up to 260, 270. I think up to 280. So
Wow.
All that weight just came right back on. My body was basically just saying, hey, we're going to fight back after all this that you've done to me. So I was always in like fight or flight more. I mean, it was a mixture between not getting my fat soluble vitamins and just going from the PSMF kind of like restrict calories, and caffeine definitely had a bolstering effect on that. My appetite was so low that I didn't even think about eating anything else. And Andrew's got a lot more on caffeine, but caffeine never did well for me. And once I cut it, it was like I felt better right away. So I mean, it took time to like wean off it, but yeah.
Let's make everybody listening feel like shit for their coffee habit. Myself included. Go ahead.
That's not what I'm saying. I
love this topic. It's so volatile.
I drink coffee occasionally, even though I don't. I recommend drinking coffee. I don't think it's good. I don't believe it's good. Yeah. It's something that I guess you could say struggle with. It's not really a struggle. I just like the flavor, so I do it once in a while. Yeah, but I recognize that it screws up my gut at the very least. I recognize that much. So go ahead, Andrew. Give us your thoughts on caffeine and coffee.
From an entomologist's perspective, I love this topic because caffeine is a pesticide. Well, it's an insecticide. So some plants have a naturally occurring with the caffeine. Among the many other things that are in a coffee bean, its purpose is to kill insects through neurological attack. So it inhibits adenosine. Adenosine is something we have and insects have. The whole purpose of that substance is to regulate the firing of the neurons. What caffeine is doing is it's replacing adenosine recepting areas, preventing that regulation that calms and keeps the nerves steady, to force them to fire off higher than they should. So when you do it to an insect, it's like you just put it into a neurological overdrive and it dies. In humans, it's dose dependent. Like you'd have to drink a lot to get that instant kill effect with an insect. But you're still doing the same thing to your body. You're altering your nerve chemistry, your brain chemistry, your synapses, and you're replacing the adenosine with the caffeine. And every cascading thing your body does in response to that builds up over time. So you're setting off your fight or flight response. You're altering how your nerves are firing. And over time, you're damaging the nerves, you're damaging your synapses, you're damaging your body's ability to produce the adenosine to begin with, because it's becoming dependent on the effect of the caffeine to spike your adrenals and everything else. So whenever you drink coffee and you're wide awake, people misunderstand. Like, you're not awake because, oh, it's energy. You're awake because you're under attack. Your body is literally under a neurological assault. But to you, it's just a stimulation in your head. But in reality, it's far worse than that.
And I think that's why I go back to like the fight or flight mode. Like I was always like had to go when I was on it. And the way I would abuse is I took what's called well, what is it called? The EC kind of stack. And anyone who's big into bodybuilding or cutting weight, it's basically ephedrine and caffeine together.
Mm-hmm.
So I was taking a lot of that, especially during my PSMF days in college, and my body definitely fought back. It's how I went from that like 2.25 to just balloon all the way back up to the weight I started at. So it's kind of just, yeah, there's something to be said there.
Yeah,
Right on.
it's back to the whole coffee thing, with it being a touchy
Kill it.
topic. This is
I think you
something
could talk me. I think you could talk me into going vegan, bro. So be careful.
I always say this on the topic of coffee because it's always a beef with people in the carnivore community. I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. You went carnivore, you literally rejected practically every piece of dietary advice on the face of the earth. You rejected everything. You went carnivore, you saw the differences in your health. But as soon as one person dares challenge the majesty, the righteousness of your precious coffee, all hell breaks loose. So I just find it amusing that despite all the changes people are willing to make and see the results, they see that like, oh no, I cannot touch that. I'm like, I'm just here to tell you what I know. You can do what you want, but it's still not bueno.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about, people loving their coffee, and not everybody's going to be perfect, obviously, and especially if you've noticed all these improvements to your health by changing your diet, whether it's carnivore or whatever. Some people, they get that a little bit of security still. I don't know. I don't promote drinking coffee. I'm not trying to make excuses or anything. I understand it's bad. I've never heard of the theory that you put forth, but that's just more issues, I guess, with that. But I also wanted to kind of ask you guys: what your day of eating looks like, more or less? Is it all mad? Is it what is it?
It's usually
and how often do you consume organs? Because that seems to be debated. How much you need to, whether you do or don't, whatever you think, or is it just like a supplement, or is it necessary? What are your thoughts?
It's I guess for me it depends on availability. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, and I could be eating liver for a couple weeks straight, or I can go for a few months without it. It's
Once a day.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can eat usually to make the liver last, I eat half. I get them a pound package each. I get maybe half of it. Sometimes I eat the whole thing in one go.
Wow.
So
you've had weeks where you've eaten, let's say, 2 or 3 livers in a week or so.
Well, a whole cow liver, I think, weighs a bit more than that.
Yeah.
But,
So it's
maybe 2 to 3 pounds in a week would be a pretty high estimate. But for the most part, it's like a pound and a half at most. And then some weeks I just don't have it. I just eat, ground beef.
Any thoughts on vitamin A toxicity? That seems to get brought up a little bit.
So I think if you ever watched Frank Tufano, he's got a great channel.
Totally, yeah.
He had a discussion about this. Of course, I kind of knew about this before he made the video. So I'm an insider. I saw him make that video. But way back when, there were explorers that ate polar bear liver, amongst other things. And they went to the hospital. They died. They were very sick. They presumed the high levels of vitamin A inside the liver were the cause. But the thing is, polar bear has a kind of a unique property in the liver compared to most animals because of where they are and what they eat, which is a very high level of cadmium. All these symptoms that they put forth before death were symptoms of a cadmium poisoning. But the problem is, this one instance has kind of been used as an evidence towards a vitamin A toxicity. So it's been applied to everything. You're not going to find a concentration of cadmium like that in a cow liver. Unless that cow is out eating seal from the Atlantic, I don't think you got a problem there.
So it wasn't a vitamin A, is your assertion? It was
an element that could not be removed from the body without poisoning oneself.
Yeah. Also, if I could butt in real quick, there's a difference between eating cow liver and taking a supplement too. I mean, you could. I could honestly say that, yeah, you can have
can
vitamin A
OD.
toxicity if you're taking nothing but vitamin A in the form of pills or something. Then there are probably cases about that. But I'm talking straight from we're talking about straight from an animal source, not necessarily polar bears. And there's no concerns at all.
Just for clarification, you're not talking about glandular supplements. You're talking about synthetic vitamin A, which is
synthetic vitamin A, beta-carotene, those kind of things. That's what most vitamin A is. I guess that's how most vitamin A is produced when you see it in supplement form. The others, it's totally different from that standpoint, like in a pill versus something like cod liver oil. So, yeah.
Do you guys take any cod liver oil or any kind of like animal-based supplements?
I don't.
I've had cod liver before, but it was canned and didn't really have the best, feeling afterwards. So I haven't had it since.
Yeah.
And you get that from like a halal market or something. Yeah, go ahead.
The problem with a lot of supplements is, one, it's usually a plant-based one to begin with. Second, bioavailability is important. And it's like people seem to think that because you concentrate a bunch of a certain molecule in a bottle, that's on paper is what it goes to the body, and that it's absorbed at all. And of course, like a good instance would be, of course, I think a lot of people on keto and carnivore know about this, is that when it comes to cell membranes, vitamin C or ascorbic acid has the same metabolic pathway as glucose. If you're eating a diet that's high in sugar and your glucose is constantly elevated in your blood, it's actually inhibiting the absorption of ascorbic acid across your cell membranes. But depending on what you eat changes the absorption rate of things too. Yeah. So I always found it funny, like my favorite thing when I was sick, I was told I had to take was this thing called Emergen C with a big C on the end. It's a brand. It's a vitamin C, like it's 1,000 milligrams. It's nothing but sugar. It's like a soda drink.
Literally,
it didn't dawn on me then because I had no clue.
It almost like balances it out in a way where it's like, no, you're taking all that vitamin C, yet you're still getting sugar, and vitamin C is more for like a glucose-based system. Say you're a sugar burner, you're going to need more vitamin C. Case in point. So it's almost, the fact is like, no, I see products like that and I just laugh. It's kind
not just vitamin C, but calcium, magnesium. If you're consuming sugar, you're going to need a lot more of maybe even everything. I'm not sure. And there's also the question of cofactors, right? Something that's probably mostly theoretical at this point. When you're eating, let's say, liver, you're not just getting vitamin C, you're getting vitamin A, you're getting
everything.
Glycogen, protein.
Literally everything, yeah. I mean, that's a real superfood if anyone asks me, okay, what's a superfood?
Pastured animal.
Yeah, and there's probably a synergistic effect there where, this vitamin helps with the absorption of this mineral and this mineral.
Especially with fat-soluble vitamins, yeah.
And I'm not trying to make any, statements about that we know this for a fact or what these relationships are exactly, because it's still very much theoretical, but looking at it from an evolutionary perspective, we ate the whole animal, nose to tail, why stop now? I'm sure that's how you guys feel. So what about protein to fat ratio? Do you guys care about that? Do you monitor that, or do you just eat?
I just eat. Of course, I kind of aim to have hot fat on the high end, but it's really just, it comes in at what's available and what you want. It's not like the world of counting calories and worrying about numbers. I gave that up, and I am so glad that I did. Keto, all that beforehand, it was nothing but spreadsheet madness, because I'm a data person. Like, you give me the opportunity, I will sit there like an analyst, accountant, and count everything to the point that I have no life afterwards. And that's just not worth it. It's not necessary. How did man get this far?
So you don't add any fat, just as fat only?
Well, if I want to, like I can add ghee, I can add butter at times. I can get fat trimmings.
Could you estimate for us your protein to fat ratio if you feel like it?
And I can take a guess. I'm sure the fat is higher than the protein, but it's not like it's not like my diet's 90% fat. It's maybe like 60, 70 maybe.
60, 70, almost like a 1-to-1. I mean, most people kind of say 1-to-1. They feel good, sometimes even a little more. When I go back to PKD is more 2-to-1. They have more fat, but yeah, I'd say more 1-to-1 if I had to guess. And I use more like any kind of added fats as like supplements. I won't make a meal out of fat, but I'll usually kind of have it like with that, like the eggs and the raw dairy. I'll just have as a supplement to some kind of red meat that I'm having. And going back to organ meats real quick, for me, it's just been accessibility. I mean, if I have access to them, I'll go out and get them, but I'm not going to stress it too much if I don't. So,
Gotcha. So you guys you don't really worry about it. You're just kind of eat intuitively. Would that be fair to say? Gotcha.
yeah, for the most part. And if you're doing more like higher activity, I'm just going to eat more. It's just the way it is. I mean, anybody can probably say that.
Speaking of activity, fitness, well, on an all meat diet, there is nothing like it on earth, at least in my experience. Like, imagine, like, I do fencing, all that. I've always had upper body strength issues because I started out, 300 pounds. I lost the weight, but I did fencing while losing the weight, so I kept the legs. So I have these massive, calves and quadriceps.
Yeah, I could say the same. Well, I used to play a lot of football
I go
myself.
to work out. I had this struggle. It didn't matter how much I was eating, what advice I was following. I could never. There was a point I couldn't break a 100-pound bench press. Like, I'm serious. I could not break 100 pounds. I start doing carnivore, and you jump from 95 to 150 in a month. You're like, what?
What's going on?
What's going on here, buddy? So
yeah,
there is something to it. That was a ridiculous change, and the fact that I was still keeping up with everyone that was essentially carb loading and fencing by going to the tournament on an empty stomach. There's something about fasting and just eating meat that just brings out a vitality that I had never felt before.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's the added protein, the fat, or all of it together? The bioavailability?
Definitely. But I think it's the absence of everything else as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some people will say, well, the meat is doing all the work. Well, no, it's not so much eating only meat, is that you exclude all these things that were hindering and stressing the body.
That you had no idea about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You didn't even know like what good felt like until you basically tried.
All these things that you assumed was normal for every day. It's just, I'm like, wow, I don't have to live with that.
Yeah, I always talk about the new normal on my channel. When people question what you're doing, I'm just like, and they'll say, I feel great. Why would I want to do what you're doing? And I never say people should, but I just tell them, look, you may think I thought I was perfectly healthy. I thought I was perfectly fine. And then I experienced the new normal, and I'm not going back. Speaking of which, do you guys ever find yourself cheating? Does that ever happen? Or are you just very, very strict all the time?
Yeah. Cheating would be like searing hamburger just to warm. Or like, for me, occasionally, so I think eggs might be something I'm allergic to. I'm not entirely sure.
So you don't eat any eggs right now?
I was going to say, I just finished my couple already. So.
Yeah. So before I went full raw, what I would do is I'd soft boil the egg, so I would get the yolk warm without actually cooking it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's warm, so I just like it that way. But that's a very rare, sparing thing, because I'm not entirely sure if I have a problem with egg whites.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. What about you, Doug? You just
me personally, I knocked down what was like 3 or 4 while we were just talking. Haven't had them in a while, and it was more just to kind of demonstrate. I mean, everything that I've been doing, I don't even think about. I just kind of do. With the raw egg whites, never really felt that bad on them, so I just kept having them. So
it reminds me of the Jonas on the doctors.
What about?
You actually taught me how to do that.
Do you guys stick to ruminant meats only, and do you eat pork? What about?
I avoid pork.
Chicken.
It's just never set well with me. I don't know why. But I'll eat raw fish, like raw salmon, raw tuna. Of course, don't buy farmed fish. It's not. It's a funny thing. Before carnivore, I never felt a difference between the two. Afterwards, it was like, your body has the ability to tell you now because you've been taken away
you've
from
isolated a lot. You've taken a lot of the triggers out, and you're isolating these single foods now a lot more.
So beef, lamb, fish. And I have, even an entomologist, I'm not an insectivore. It's never really appealed to me. I like to study the bugs and collect them.
I don't see, talking crickets.
I'm not saying that people can't do that, but it's just never really appealed to me.
Gotcha. Chicken?
Yeah.
It's too lean. I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's like even satisfied, it just doesn't satiate, in my opinion.
Yeah. Even if we had like access to like pastured chicken. I mean, I've had pastured pork. I'll give you a quick backstory. Andrew and I met up a couple months ago at a farmer's market in Dallas, which was a lot of fun. And I had some pastured pork. I had some grass-fed, grass-finished beef. and we split some sashimi together. It was really good. The pork itself, yeah, for me, never really settled well with me, so I'm more into kind of ruminant meat myself. And
Not even pastured, it didn't really make a difference.
even pastured, like I had no problem. I'll have no issue eating raw chicken or raw pork, pastured. Like as far as like the way like I envision, like just eating, like I would never have conventional chicken or conventional pork raw.
Okay.
But even the pastured stuff, I still didn't feel as good as I did eating like red meat or wild caught fish, eggs, raw dairy. So
there's some evidence out there that pork may, in some people, thicken their blood or something along those lines. It has a similar effect to gluten. I forget what the process is exactly.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. So, I mean, this leads me to my next question, even though I kind of know the answer already. Grain finished versus grass finished.
Grass finished all the way.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I found out by trial and error. So in College Station, I mentioned that really cheap chuck roast that was coming from While it was straight from a farm, it was still grain finished. At the time, I felt great eating it. I was starting carnivore. Everything felt great compared to what I was doing. But then I dared to try to eat only grass-fed for a month. And then I went to go back to save money. And it made me sick. I was like, I don't understand. This is not fair. Well, it turns out I became sensitive to whatever was off about the meat. I just didn't notice it before. I was like, well, crap. This is not very... It's one of those... It's a blessing and a curse. I akin it to having imagine having a radar. And by removing all these things, the more effective it becomes at detecting problems and communicating to you.
So you notice a big difference. You do notice a big difference. What about you, Doug? You prefer...
And going back to, I mean, I kind of mentioned it a couple minutes ago, how the more you, or I guess you eliminate, the more you like cook less and less to starting to go raw. There's a real big taste difference between raw grain finished versus raw grass finished. And if you're usually just cooking your steaks, you're having burgers, medium or something like that, you're not gonna notice that difference. You're just not.
Yeah.
And you may even prefer the grain finished over the grass finished when you're cooking. But when I challenge anyone to cook a little less and maybe even experiment with raw themselves, and they'll soon realize, okay, there's a huge taste difference, especially when you're not seasoning as well. So that was a taste and a feeling thing, and it was a real progression. Don't get me wrong; I didn't just kind of dive right into raw. I was cooking less, I was seasoning less, and I just went completely raw and seasoned, and noticed that this grass-fed, grass-finished stuff is so much better.
Not just flavor, but how it makes you feel also.
It's my opinion that the reason why people like to cook and season so much of the beef and meat today is because of how nutritionally devoid the conventional food is. It's making up for the fact that they think there's no taste. So they think they have to season it. But then you give them grass-fed and you eat it raw, it's like, whoa, there's a taste to it. Also, I think a lot of people hate liver not because it's not good, it's because they don't know what it's supposed to taste like. They get a conventional liver, and it tastes like this bitter scum. Yeah. It's like...
And even having it raw, it's just, conventional liver never tasted good at all. There's a difference between like a calf's liver or something like straight from the farm versus, something...
Do we lose Doug, or is it just me?
I was afraid it was me for a second.
Liver and onions. It's just the taste isn't. It's totally different, and that kind of just goes with raw too. I mean, from grass-fed, grass-finished versus grain finished. Just that the taste is there, and people will notice almost immediately. It's not, and I'm not just saying this. Andrew's not just saying this. It's you'll see when you try for yourself.
Yeah. Biochemically, though, any thoughts on what the difference might be biochemically as far as also nutrient content between grass-fed and...
Well, because your body can detect those things. It's not like a conscious thing. It's chemoreception, which, of course, I like because I do entomology. Insects are all about chemoreception. Let's say, for instance, you've got a grasshopper. It's going through someone's wheat or crops, feeding on the grass and stuff. It's constantly testing everything through chemoreception to see if it's edible. So in an insect, the mouth parts, you have mandibles, you have palps, you have labial palps, you have tarsal claws, everything. they're constantly doing chemoreception on what they're going over to ensure it is chemically compatible to what they can eat. Well, if an insect can do that without a conscious mind, certainly the human organism does it as well internally, just not, it's not in your head. So it can detect those differences and secrete responses through hormones to generate different feelings in the body or a different state of being. And if you eat something that's nutritionally devoid, it's not going to be as energizing, so to speak. Not that it's giving you energy, but it's causing a change in the body. It's something that is nutritionally compact and dense.
I call that hitting the spot.
Yes.
It doesn't. Go ahead.
I was going to also mention, I'll send you some links on kind of like grass-fed or versus grain-fed in terms of I guess fat-soluble vitamin content. The omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, it's not as huge as people assume that it is, but
yeah,
I mean, if you're eating as much fat as we are, it may start to make a difference. So, I was gonna say like more vitamin A. I don't know necessarily vitamin E, but I just know there's a higher fat-soluble vitamin content in grass-fed, grass-finished fat versus grain. So that's just, there's something to be said there. So
okay,
and then just the taste too, especially raw. It's like it's a totally completely different taste. Grain-fed fat never tasted good to me, at least raw. And
like I remember,
grain-fed. Sorry, go ahead.
I was in College Station before I went to the grass-fed stuff. I tried to do brisket because brisket you can get cheap per pound. It's sold in massive packages. The fat on that made me so nauseous, like ridiculously nauseous. And last week I had brisket from 2S Ranch for the first time, which a good friend of ours is Bart Simmons. He has a nice grass-fed and finished ranch operation. And I tried that, and his briskets, they have a really good fat cap on them. No nausea.
It looked incredible when I saw the pictures.
It's a world of difference. I'm like, I thought it should be because it was too much fat. My body's like, stop, dude. Put it down. No, it's because the fat, whatever is going on nutritionally with that cow, what's been stored in the fat, it's just not sitting right with the body. The body's like, stop it now. Spit it out. But with the grass-fed, it's just like, give more.
Yeah. You want more versus, okay,
it has a flavor
here,
to it.
so.
Fat has like a. It's so hard to describe that. It's the difference. Like the grain fed, it's like it's hard, it's coarse, but it has no taste. It's like a chop.
Yeah, literally.
The grass fed, it's like a. It's like you would say sweet, but then people don't know what you mean unless they've actually had it. I don't know how to really put that in the words, but it has a pleasant, desirable taste to it. It's not.
Well, once you take out the carbs and the sugar out of your diet, all these things that never tasted sweet before, all of a sudden they do. And sugar is just disgusting.
Yeah, like the pastured pork that I had, and they tasted like apricots. It was like incredible, and that's I wish I could tolerate it, but it's just it never went that well for me. But it's like, you become so hypersensitive to these different tasting fats, especially in the raw state, and you're just like, wow, there's this whole new realm that I never knew existed until I went out and experimented for myself. So
here's the thing with pastured pork: just because the pig is out in pasture, that doesn't mean it's still not being supplemented concentrate that's soy-based. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe I'm wondering if these pigs are also eating soy. That omega-6 to omega-3 ratio isn't very favorable. I'm not sure.
And with pork itself, it's already the 0.3/6 ratio is already off in itself. It's more 0.6, and maybe that's why I felt better on beef, which is a lot more neutral, and then fish is just on another level. But if you can find good fish,
It also I would say it also depends on the person and your genetics, because I've never had any issues with pork. I don't eat too much of it, but I do consume a decent amount of lard. But I'm in Ecuador, and the pigs here, the pigs that I get anyway, they eat weeds, you know what I mean? They do get a little bit of corn and maybe some grain also, but they eat bananas, papayas, and lots of vegetation because that's just available. So, and it's also, it's a different breed of pig as well. So maybe that has something to do with it, because there are populations that seem to do very well, especially in Asia, on eating lots and lots of pork. But maybe it's also because they balance that out with seafood. I'm not sure which is omega-3 rich, as you guys know. So finally, because I like to keep these streams under an hour and a half, 2 hours, I wanted to ask you guys about social issues surrounding, because look, you eat raw meat, so conventionally we're all freaks, right? We're weirdos. Do you guys run into any issues?
I used to be like, well,
do you guys like run into issues when you go out to eat, or do you not care anymore? Is it like in relationships?
So
I got you.
I mean, it just came to like a real understanding in terms of like relationships. Like my family understands, my friends understand. It's more so just this is the way I eat, and just the way I'm going to be doing it around you. Either accept me for who I am, or just kind of go about your own way. So, I mean, the ones that care are going to support you, and
of course,
try to understand that kind of thing. So,
no, I understand, but sometimes, let's say, like you're traveling right now. It might get a little bit difficult.
Oh, you're talking food, like
all of it, everything that's changed as far as socially and pragmatically as far as your life is concerned. Now that you're eating a diet that's completely different than what everybody else is eating. That's what I mean. Any issues.
So like reactions from like the I guess you could say the public or something. Like I've sat outside of like Whole Foods and had raw salmon and raw ground beef just literally right there. It's almost like a thought experiment. I'm like, okay, what are people going to say? And I've had reactions to, oh wow, are you really eating that? Versus, oh, I wish I could have that. I had that when I was a little kid, and I'm just like, oh man.
What if you do that outside of a sushi restaurant? Let's see if they make the connection.
Yeah, I mean, if I had something like, people won't even bat an eye if I have sashimi or something, or at a Japanese restaurant. But I'm sitting outside of Whole Foods and eating something like that. I'll get like a grind straight from the butcher or something, and then, like I said, I'll have those different kind of reactions to, oh wow, how can you eat that? Versus some people that used to have it when they were like little kids, and they're looking at me like, oh wow. So it's funny, and I just remembered that one conversation I had with someone like, oh, I used to always steal a little bit of the ground beef before my grandmother made meatballs or something. I'm kind of just like, yeah, I mean, there's something to be said.
An affinity for raw meat from very little.
Yeah.
I always ate some raw meat. My pops was big on steak tartare, so that was always around. You always tried it, and I guess I was kind of primed. Oh, anyway, anything you want to contribute, Andrew, as far as the social impacts or what things have changed? Like, do you guys pack lunch anymore? You know what I mean? Is that even an issue?
I fast for the most part. If food's not available, I just do without it. And that's the great thing is you're not hungry.
No,
There's no really crisis. There's no crisis at all. The thing is, everyone around me has been watching me all these years do these changes. They know that I've figured something out. And they can't argue with the results. They can sit there and say, well, it's not for me, or I don't like it. But they can't sit there and go, that's hurting me.
Are they curious enough to try, maybe?
Some of them are. They wonder, like, this dude keeps getting better and better. There's something.
They see the results, and they could tell you're onto something there.
Yeah, there's some real curiosity in it from other people, especially ones that maybe would have had it, like I said, as a kid or something, and they're going, okay, well, it's not deemed like right, quote unquote, around me, but I still want to go get that for myself. And you kind of have to go against the norm. I mean, it's funny, everything that made me feel better was going against the norm, going against convention. It's just like I felt better every step of the way, so I'm not stopping. It doesn't matter what anybody really tells me in this sense. So.
Yeah, I always say that, we hear all these things about meat, and then you take everything out of your diet except the meat, and you find out the exact opposite of what you've been told. Like when it comes to inflammation, for example, I used to have major like joint issues, and I took the plants out, and now I'm better, but it's supposed to be killing me. Like how can something, I say this all the time, how can something that's so bad feel so good? Someone please make that make sense to me.
Speaking of which, I was getting arthritis from fencing. I'm a left-handed person, so my leading leg's my left hand, shooting pain up my arm and in my hips from all because you lunge a lot as you're attacks and fencing. It's gone.
Gone.
And that happened within a couple of months.
My experience. Obviously, I'm not a fencer, but I've had similar experiences as a former longtime cyclist. Like my knees were wrecked. I thought I was going to be in a wheelchair in about a decade or so, right? And now I'm like better than I've been in at least a decade. So there's definitely something to this. Yeah, the mainstream is probably not too receptive yet, and
No.
we're kind of going to be marginalized, definitely, at least for a while. But you can't argue with the results, man. You really can't.
No.
Is
And
there
then
anything
it's
else you guys want to? Go ahead.
Mhm. Oh, I was going to say, it's also real unfortunate for something so natural as just cows grazing on grass. It's like, it's so difficult just to being able to source, especially, I mean, you talk to the lay person, it's like, okay, where am I getting my grass-fed, grass-finished beef? Where am I getting all these high-quality animal foods that we used to get probably so much easier in the past, but now it's just so difficult. So I mean, that's I guess my wish going into World Carnivore Month as it is now, this week of beef burgers only. It's just my wish is for people to, I guess, well, first and foremost, get rid of the seed oils, get rid of the grains, get rid of the sugar, but also just start understanding there's also other types of higher quality food that's out there, and eat what you like and can afford, sure, but just know that it's out there to even feel better. So, and that's also going toward more like the whole cooking your food a little less, and you normally would.
Well, it seems like there's a demand building for better quality meats and organs also, and it seems like the market farmers are responding a little bit to that. So, you keep asking for it, they're gonna produce it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Is there anything else you wanted to add, Andrew, before we close out? Maybe you guys could give us your contact info or social media once again.
Yes. So on Twitter, it's the Carnivorous Entomologist. The actual handle is just Carnivore Ant-Man, since obviously Ant-Man's already taken. And I have a YouTube. It's just my name, which is just Andrew J. Graff. I have not been using it like for monetary reasons. It's been online storage because you can upload for free on YouTube. You'll find my fencing. I got to do fencing practice videos on there. My adventures in different countries for entomology. I do compilations of all the footage I take. It's some pretty cool stuff. I play it to epic music, but I think it's cool to sit there and just watch and see what is actually out there. It's just so beautiful. Those insects are just so diverse around the world. You never know what you're going to see when you go into a different tropical country.
And if you send me, sorry, bro, if you send me a link, I'll definitely post that in the description. So please do that. You want to plug anything, Doug?
I mean, I'm right_Doug on Twitter. I'm also a moderator for World Carnivore Tribe on Facebook. If you'd like to join us. It's World Carnivore Month. We're having a lot of fun. We're getting a lot of new members, as well as that Rawsome group. Andrew, if you still remember the name, actually, no, I got it in front of me. It's a Rawsome Primal Carnivore and Zero Carb Sanctuary from Eva LaRoche, who is the admin, and then we help out as moderators for that site. Another different, I guess, method to go about introducing yourself to carnivore as well as raw carnivore would be those two groups, as well as just getting involved in the community like we are now. I mean, we're available. You can talk to us, ask us your questions, and if anything, we get real enjoyment out of being there for you guys. So especially me, because I know where I was in the past, and there were just a lot of different questions that I had to ask myself. So
one thing I didn't kind of slip my mind, in March, there's the first ever, it's the Carnivore Conference in Boulder. So me and Doug will be there. If anyone ever wants to meet up or chat with stuff there, more than happy to do that. Just type in Carnivore Conference, Boulder, Colorado. I think it's March 4th.
I want to say 7th, but I could be wrong on that.
It's in the first week of March. I know that.
Yeah, definitely first week of March.
Well, once again, if you send me a link, I'll definitely include that in the description as well. Well, all right, gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming through. I'm really appreciative of you being on and sharing your experience. I think it's valuable, and I think there is a demand for this sort of information and same kind of experiences. So it's been a pleasure. Once again, thank you both. And maybe one day, we can do this again some other time. Maybe when you guys quit carnivory and go vegan, we could have your, ex carnivore interviews.
Because there's so many out there, right?
I mean, it'll happen. Maybe, I don't know. Everyone seems so happy with this way of eating, myself included. So, you know, but shit happens. It is what it is. Anyway, thanks so much once again, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. It's lots of fun, and stay in touch.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on. Always
Thanks for
glad
having
to
us.
talk.
All right,
Definitely.
take it easy.
All right, bye.
Just a quick shout out to everybody that's come to check out this stream, chatting it up in the chat room. Thank you all for supporting the channel, checking out the conversation, and hit me up if you want to be part of it. Take it easy, everybody.